This video contains content that may disturb you and challenge your perception of reality. Ensure you're in a safe space before you continue. Hello, and welcome to Horror Flix. I'm Charlie. Tonight, we step into the darkness where the boundaries between the living and the dead crumble. Two gateways to terror await you. A Ouija board session that went wrong, and a late-night gas station that became a bloodstained memory. These aren't legends. They aren't movie scenes. After tonight, you'll never look at a Ouija board the same way. The nightmare of Arthur Maxwell. Arthur Maxwell never thought a dusty old board game in a basement closet would nearly destroy his sanity. He was 16 when he first discovered what a Ouija board was. Out of curiosity, he asked his mother if they had one. To his surprise, she said yes, buried somewhere in the basement with the old board games. Together, they dug through an old closet by the laundry room. It smelled like dust, age, and forgotten memories. And then they found it. A box barely holding together at the corners, with Ouija written across the front, and the eerie image of two hands clutching the planchette. Arthur couldn't resist. He invited his friends Liam and Jack over that weekend. His younger brother Adam, 2 years younger, was also home. Perfect. 4 people. 4 hands. One chilling game. They waited until nightfall. Lights off. A flashlight in the corner, barely illuminating the board. They sat in his loft, now his bedroom, and placed their fingers lightly on the planchette. They started with simple questions. Arthur asked, "If there's someone there, move the planchette." Slowly, it slid to yes. They all exchanged glances. Someone had to be messing around. "Right?" Adam asked. "How old are you?" The planchette moved from 6 to 7, 67. They kept asking more questions, each more daring than the last. Eventually, Arthur asked, "Are you a demon?" The planchette moved. "Yes." Laughter broke the tension. Clearly someone was just playing along. But right then, the flashlight died. It didn't flicker. It just shut off. Silence. Then panic. "Who did that?" someone whispered. But no one had moved. The flashlight sat untouched in the far corner. Arthur crawled over, pressing the button. Nothing. Dead. When he turned on the bedside lamp, everyone's faces told the same story. This wasn't funny anymore. They ditched the board and ran to the backyard, trying to shake the feeling. Eventually, the others left. Arthur was alone with Adam and the board. He put it back in its box and left it in the basement. But that uneasy feeling didn't go away. That night, Arthur tried to sleep. No scrolling through his phone, just silence and darkness. Then a crash. Something fell inside his closet. He sat up, heart pounding. Flicking on the lamp, he crept toward the walk-in closet. A single light bulb lit the inside. He saw them. 2 shadowy feet beneath the door. Frozen, he screamed for Adam and ran to his room. When they came back together, the shadows were gone. The light was still on, but there was no one inside. Only a small wooden box on the floor. The one Arthur made as a child to hold his memories had fallen over, its contents spilled. There was no draft, no logical reason it should have fallen. That night, Arthur slept in his parents' bed. The next night too, and the one after that. Eventually, he returned to his room, but he never touched the Ouija board again. Some games don't like being played. Gregory's house. Cody had never touched a Ouija board before. It wasn't that he was scared, he just didn't care. But one night, things changed. His friend George had been talking to a girl named Mandy. She was into all the creepy, spiritual stuff, ghosts, haunted houses, Ouija boards. And that night, She invited George to an abandoned house she claimed was high in activity. George dragged Cody along, promising him the other girl, Carly, was cute. Cody agreed, expecting a weird but harmless adventure. They picked up the girls near a park around 11 p.m. Carly had red hair, a nose ring, and a sleeve tattoo. Mandy carried a large bag, and when Cody asked what was in it, she casually pulled out an Ouija board and a candle. That was the surprise. By midnight, they arrived at the house. The place was tucked off a dark, deserted road, surrounded by trees and silence. It looked dead. Gated off and crumbling, they had to sneak through a back window Mandy had used before. Inside, it felt like stepping into a frozen time capsule. Furniture was still there, rotting, moldy, untouched for decades. Dust hung in the air like it hadn't moved in years. Cody didn't scare easily, but even he couldn't ignore how heavy the silence felt in that house. The old portraits of grim-faced people on the walls didn't help either. Probably 1950s, probably long dead. Mandy set up the board in the middle of the living room floor and lit 2 candles. She took charge, asking the board if anyone was there. For the first few minutes, nothing happened. But then, slowly, the planchette moved. It spelled H-E-L-L-O. Cody smirked at George. He didn't buy it. One of the girls had to be pushing it, but they were dead serious. Mandy asked for a name. The board spelled Gregory. Then she asked, "How long have you been dead?" The answer, 30YEARS. Still, Cody didn't believe it, but they all played along until they heard it. A loud, heavy thump from upstairs. Everyone froze. George asked if someone was up there. Mandy, wide-eyed, whispered, "Maybe it's Gregory." She and Carly put their hands back on the board and asked, "Gregory, did you make that sound?" The planchette moved again. Y-E-S. Cody and George weren't amused anymore. They figured this was all a setup, that someone else was upstairs playing along. But then came the footsteps. Real, slow, deliberate steps above them. Not like someone sneaking around, like someone walking. George and Cody decided to check it out. The girls begged them not to, but they climbed the creaky staircase anyway. Upstairs, they entered the first bedroom. Everything was worse here, like the air had been still for 100 years. A small door stood cracked open in the corner. A closet maybe, then a breath. A long, soft exhale came from behind that door. Neither of them said a word. They just ran. Back down the stairs, through the living room. But it was empty. The candles were gone. The board, gone. The girls, gone. No sound, no trace, just darkness. Cody and George didn't waste a second. They jumped out the window, ran to the car, and drove. George tried calling Mandy. Voicemail again. And again. They never heard from her again. And Cody, he never touched a Ouija board after that. Never even wanted to hear the word. Because sometimes, dead things do talk back. Grandma's here, Georgie. Halloween was near, and he couldn't stop devouring scary stories, especially the ones about Ouija boards. People claimed they summoned spirits, heard voices, and saw things. He didn't believe all of it, but he wanted to. So George ordered a Ouija board online. The night it arrived, his parents were out. Perfect. He convinced his little sister to join him at the dining table. Lights dimmed. The two of them sat holding the planchette. George asked silly questions, and they laughed. It felt awkward, like a game they both knew wasn't real. To mess with her, he pushed the planchette a little. She rolled her eyes. She knew it was him. After a few more failed questions, she got bored and left. But George wasn't done. Later that night, around 1 a.m., with his sister asleep and the house dead silent, he crept downstairs again. Lights dimmed, board set, alone this time. He whispered the same questions, half hoping something, anything, would answer. Nothing. But then, footsteps, soft, slow ones above him. George froze. Maybe his sister was up again. But the footsteps weren't coming from her room. They were coming from the one directly overhead, his older brother's room, the one that had been empty for weeks. His brother was away at college. Then came the voice, muffled, female. He couldn't quite hear the words, but it sounded like an older woman, definitely not his sister. And the voice was getting clearer the closer he moved to the stairs. His stomach twisted. It was coming from his brother's room. George crept up the steps barefoot. He pressed his ear to the closed door. The voice was repeating something now, over and over. "Grandma's here, Georgie." His breath stopped. His grandma had died 2 years ago. The voice, her voice, was saying it again and again, each word slow, soaked in warmth and death. It wasn't possible. His sister couldn't mimic that voice. No one could. His hand shook as he grabbed the doorknob. Click. He flicked the light on. The room was empty. Just silence. George backed away, eyes wide, heart slamming against his chest. He ran straight to his room, slammed the door, locked it, and buried himself under the covers. The air felt heavier, and everything spun like he was in a nightmare. But he wasn't asleep. He couldn't be. He didn't sleep at all that night. Instead, he lay there, eyes open, whispering prayers in the dark, just trying to feel something normal again. But all he felt was that voice echoing in his ears. "Grandma's here, Georgie." And 8 years later, George still hears it, just as clear, just as cold. The station before dawn. It was the mid-60s in Atlanta. Ed Howes was just a kid then, 8 or 9 years old, riding to school with his father every morning before the sun was even up. Most days, they stopped at a small gas station, full service. An attendant would fill the tank, wipe the windows, and pull bills and coins from a bulky belt pouch. But one morning felt wrong. They pulled in, deserted, no attendant, no movement. Just the low, steady hum of traffic slipping by in the dark. His father honked once, twice, nothing. They waited. Maybe the guy was in the bathroom, his father guessed. Maybe car trouble, maybe just late. Minutes passed. Not a single car pulled in. Ed, needing to use the bathroom, grabbed the door handle, but his father shook his head. "Number, we'll stop at the next station." They drove away, a chill settling in the car. 2 days later, Ed heard his father shout from the kitchen. In the newspaper was a small story. That gas station, the one they always stopped at, had been the scene of a killing. The attendant had been found stuffed into the men's bathroom, stabbed multiple times. Robbery, they said. Petty cash is missing. Early morning change. Probably not even worth it. Ed sat frozen, staring at the paper. He kept thinking about that morning, about how close he had been to opening that door, to seeing something he could never unsee. After that, Howes and his father never went back to that station, never even drove past it. Because sometimes, the worst thing isn't what happens to you, it's what you almost saw, and how close death brushes by without making a sound. He just called me Rob. Robert Clark worked the night shift at a gas station. Bills were piling up, and a second job felt like survival. Most nights were slow, empty roads, occasional truckers, and silence. But around his second or third month, someone started showing up. Always a 2 a.m. sharp, tall guy, 6 feet easy, long, greasy hair, never bought gas, just a tall boy of beer. He'd crack it open right there and wander out into the dark. Robert figured he lived nearby, probably didn't have a car, but it was the 4th or 5th visit when the man finally spoke. "What's your name?" "Robert," he said. The man just chuckled. "Rob, I like that." Then he laughed to himself like it was the best joke he'd ever heard. Walked out drinking, muttering, definitely drunk. Night after night it became a pattern. He'd stumble in, sometimes sober, sometimes so wasted he could barely stand. He'd greet Robert the same way each time. "Hey, Rob." Sometimes he'd just lean on the snack shelf, staring at the wall, not saying a word. One night, Robert finally asked, "What's your name?" The guy hesitated, blinked slow, and said, "Bob." Robert didn't buy it. Bob felt like a fake name. Too easy, too close to Rob. But he played along. "So Bob, where do you work?" Bob let out this ugly loud laugh, one of those that made the room feel smaller. Then he snarled, "I don't. Government. Mikasa be out of my job." He paused, locked eyes with Robert and said, "I like you, Rob. You seem like you know what you're doing." Then he walked out, just like that. After that night, Bob disappeared for over a week. No more late-night visits. Robert didn't miss him. The guy had always felt off, like the drunk part was just the surface. Something darker boiled underneath. Then came the storm. Wind howled. The rain beat the windows. Robert was restocking the fridge when the door chime rang. Before he turned, something in him knew. It was Bob. He looked up, and there he was, soaked head to toe. No jacket, no umbrella. Just jeans and a dark shirt plastered to his skin. His long hair stuck to his face. He stood at the door, staring at the wall. Silent, blank, angry. "Bob, you okay?" No answer. Then low and cold, "I did something really bad." Robert's stomach dropped. "What did you do?" Bob's eyes stayed fixed forward. "I need somewhere to hide." Then he moved, slowly, toward the hallway that led to the restrooms and storage room. Robert just stood there, unsure. A minute passed, then 5, then 10. No sound, no footsteps, no door opening, nothing. Then, total darkness. The storm knocked out the power. Silence swallowed everything. Robert grabbed a flashlight from under the counter and moved slowly toward the back. His path took him past the restroom hallway, both doors slight. No Bob. He pushed open the storage room door. He was headed for the breaker panel until he heard it, dripping, wet shoes squeaking. He froze. "Bob?" he whispered in response. But the sound moved to his left. He turned the flashlight, and Bob was there, eyes wide, pupils blown out, clothes soaked. And then he lunged, screaming, "I'm gonna kill you." Robert fell back. Bob clawed at his shoulders, snarling like an animal. Robert shoved him off and sprinted for the front. Bob didn't follow. He grabbed his rain jacket, ran to his car, and locked the doors with shaking hands. He dialed 911 and didn't look back until help arrived. Bob vanished that night. B. Robert never forgot what he said. "I like you, Rob. You seem like you know what you're doing." Only now did it feel like a warning. The passenger. Matteo M. had done his fair share of night driving, not for work, but because he and his old friend group used to stay out till 4 or 5 a.m., wasting time in parking lots and parks like it meant something. It was one of those nights. After dropping a friend off near the park, Matteo stopped at his usual gas station before heading home. He liked fueling up at night. No lines, no noise, no people. As he walked toward the building to pay, a short man in a hoodie crossed his path. He stopped, stared, cold. Still, Mateo didn't flinch. "What?" he said. No answer. Just a stare. Crackhead, he thought, brushing it off. He paid for the gas, grabbed a lottery ticket, came back out, filled up, and took off into the dead silence of early morning roads. Then, a sound from behind him. Mateo checked the rearview mirror. Someone was in the back seat. It was him. The man from the gas station, grinning. Mateo screamed. A raw, broken sound. He slammed the brakes and screamed again, louder this time. "Get out!" He flung the door open, yelling "Help!" into the quiet neighborhood. Porch lights flickered on. Doors creaked open. The man slowly stepped out. "I could have slit your throat," he whispered. And just like that, he ran off into the dark. Neighbors came out, asked if Mateo was okay. He was shaking, told them everything. The guy had vanished into the night. He didn't chase, didn't even want to blink. Just got back in his car, drove home, and kept checking the mirror. That was the night Mateo M. realized monsters don't hide under beds. They wait in the back seat. Don't stop for coffee. Julia M. Jolie was 25 when it happened. She was driving alone from North to South Texas through the long, empty veins of Route 281. Because of her job, the only time she could make the trip was late at night, when the roads were quiet and the world was asleep. The route was straight, simple, but staying awake was the hard part. She was already exhausted, drained from work, and had jumped straight onto the highway. To stay awake, she kept stopping at whatever gas stations she could find, just for some bitter coffee and a few minutes of brightness. This would be her third stop of the night. Her eyelids were starting to betray her, and the gas tank was dangerously low. She spotted a station glowing dimly on a desolate side road. Maybe a Shell, maybe a Sunoco. She couldn't even remember. There was only one other car in the lot. She pulled up to a pump and stepped inside. 2 people, a tired cashier, and a man. The man was pacing the aisles like a shadow that couldn't settle. She made her way to the coffee station. As she poured her cup, the man approached. "Careful," he said. "It's hot." Then he walked away. It wasn't charming. It wasn't funny. It was wrong. At the counter, as she paid for the gas and coffee, he came up behind her again. "I really like that top," he said. She forced out a small "thank you," trying to keep it brief. Then he asked, "Where are you heading off to so late?" She'd had enough. She told him to leave her alone, firmly. The cashier just stood there, silent, unsure. Maybe he didn't speak much English. Maybe he just didn't want trouble. The man said, "Calm down," like she was the problem. She left the store without another word. As she began pumping gas, she heard the door open behind her. Footsteps echoed lightly across the concrete. They stopped. She glanced over. There he was, standing on the other side of the pump, just watching her. No car, no pump handle in his hand, just him, silent, staring. Her heart thudded. He crept closer, leaning slightly. "Are you alone?" Her gut twisted. "No," she said quickly. "My boyfriend's in the car." She opened her door and reached into the center console, grabbing her pepper spray. Quiet, controlled. She kept it at her side, tried to act like she was still focused on the pump. But he didn't stop. "I don't see anyone in there," he said, starting to move around the pump toward her. That was it. She raised the pepper spray, locked eyes with him. He laughed, backed off slowly, just making conversation, he said, smiling as he walked backward. But his eyes never left her. The pump clicked. Full tank. But she'd paid extra. She still had $6 of change inside. He was between her and the store. She had to make a choice. She kept the pepper spray aimed stepped forward carefully. He continued to back away, chuckling like this was a joke to him. Inside, she told the cashier the man was creeping her out. He didn't react, just nodded, maybe not understanding or not caring. She looked through the glass doors before leaving. The lot looked empty, but she knew he hadn't left. Outside, she stayed on the sidewalk, scanning every corner. The man was gone, or worse, hiding. A few minutes passed. Then a pickup truck pulled in. A large man with a thick beard stepped out. She rushed to him. "Can you check if someone's hiding behind my car?" she asked. He gave her a puzzled look, but walked over. She drove off and didn't stop again. That man hadn't been making conversation. He had been waiting for her to unlock the door, waiting for a chance. And that was what chilled her most. Not what happened, but what almost did. And that brings us to the end of tonight's darkness. Julia M. Jolie survived something most of us can't even imagine. Not a ghost, not a demon, but a man. One that didn't need fangs or claws to be a monster. Just a smile, a lie, and a moment of silence too long. That gas station. It should have been just a pit stop. Instead, it became a test of instincts and survival. And as for Arthur Maxwell and the others who dared to play with the dead, some doors, once opened, don't close without leaving something behind. A whisper, a shadow, a presence. Tonight's stories are your warning. The next time you're offered a game that feels too strange, the next time someone watches you too long at a quiet place in the dead of night, listen to the silence, because it might be the only warning you get. If you're still breathing and still brave, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more true horrors every week. Because here on Horror Flix, we don't just tell scary stories, we bring them to life. Stay safe, stay alert, and remember, some nightmares begin in places you know all too well. Until next time, keep the lights on.